Hey everybody, I thought about doing a few of these tips and tricks videos for quite a while now. Some basic things pop in my head and I think some people might want to know about this, and I figured I'd start with a real basic one. It's something that is rather intuitive. Some people don't really consider it because, for whatever reason. I get a lot of questions about the clay types I use, and at first I was using air dry clay in my earlier videos. That became impractical for a whole host of reasons. And then I tried Monsterclay, and I had problems with it because I was unfamiliar with its working style. And so then I switched over to Chavant, and I used this for a while. Several of my videos, I was using this one solely. And then I decided to give Monsterclay Gray a shot, and I actually really liked using that one. So I decided to revisit Monsterclay. And again, I found it had issues. One of the biggest issues I had with this was it's waxy. Anyone will tell you it's like wax-based clay as opposed to oil, but he says sulfur-free oil-based elastic clay. But yeah, there's clearly oil in here. It's like an oil clay, but it's very waxy. There's a lot of wax in it. And one of the biggest problems I would have is if you've ever played with candles or with candle wax, is that it's very difficult to get wax to stick to itself even. And I was having problems like that with this. As opposed to Chavant, this stuff's very sticky. It gets all over your tools, your hands, and that was also undesirable. And I figured, well, these are about the same color, right? You know, Monsterclay. And I went, well, why don't I mix them? And so one of my videos I haven't even posted yet, I decided to do that, and it worked extremely well. And so here's actually a tub of it here. This is about 50-50 Monsterclay Chavant mix. And the way I did this, I just melted it in a bucket. And these Monsterclays, they come in a container that's actually oven safe, and they give you instructions on how to heat it. But you can melt this down into a liquid and then pour it in the molds. But you can also melt Chavant. And so the way I did it before was I heated the outside of this a little bit just to loosen it, dumped it in the bucket, got a couple of blocks of this, dumped it in the bucket at 50-50 ratio, and I heated it up. And I melted it down, and then I got a stir stick. I think it was actually this one here. And I stirred it, and I think I did a little Instagram post about this actually. So anyway, I got some more buckets here, and I decided I want to add some more Monsterclay to this batch to make it a little less sticky, a little more waxy. And so I'm just going to do that now. I'll give you a quick demo of that, just give you an idea what the process looks like. But it's one of those don't try this at home kids things. You know, it's just be very careful if you're trying this. You can put it in the oven at a very low temperature. I'm putting it in at around 90 degrees Celsius. That should melt it down. And make sure whatever container you're using is heat resistant to that temperature, or you will have one hell of a mess, possibly even a fire. So be very careful if you're even considering doing this. So yeah, that's it for now. I'm gonna just put it in the oven over here. In fact, I can just turn it to the oven. And what I'll do for this one is put this one in along with this, and then I'll melt the two down to probably a semi-liquid, and then I'm gonna dump it in one of those new buckets I got that's larger. Yep, it's quite heavy. Just take this cover off this. Put it in. That's about right. So I'll just let that sit for maybe an hour. You want to heat it very, very, very slowly, just to be safe. Keep checking on it, make sure it's not spilling over, or your bucket's melting or anything like that. So we'll check back here in a few. I'll crack this open and I'll show you the results. Okay, so it's been a few hours. It took a lot longer than I thought it would. But yeah, it takes quite a while to get to heat this up very slowly. But I think it's about ready. It's still a bit sludgy, but that's going to be good enough to pour. And it might even be better this way, because if it turns into right total liquid, it can splash, and it's hot, and it hurts if it gets on you. And of course, if you get on your carpet, whatever, it might be more difficult to get that out as well. So I'm going to pull this out of here very carefully. So one piece at a time. Now this bucket has a handle. That's good. So I can get up underneath it. Whoa. The plastic does soften a little bit. Damn, that's hot. So when you drop it down on the floor, don't drop it too hard because it will splash. Oh. One. There you go. The jiggly. Jiggly. So I'm going to take one of these buckets. And if it doesn't heat up all the way this first time, I can just put it back in this bucket instead. So we're just going to tilt it. Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, it's still a bit solid. Oh. Ugh, splash. Kerplump. So I'll even scrape that out of there. This one I can go in here. Same thing. This one's a bit more liquidy. So you get a little mixing stick, dowel stick. I'll just turn this way so you can see. Wah! And just scrape it out of there. All right. So you can see there's a little minor color difference between the two, but that'll all work out when it's mixed in and nice. So now that this is transferred, I'm going to put it back in there and let it heat up for another hour or so. At the same temperature, I don't want to raise it too high because it'll be more dangerous that way. So anyway, I'm going to put this back in. I'm going to take this out. Always very carefully take this out because it does get pretty hot. It's hot and heavy. Yeah, there you go. So here's another round of mixing. It's almost completely liquid. You want to get in here and stir it to break it up because this center piece, it'll take a long time to get it break down. But the goal is to just turn this into a pretty much almost complete liquid. It can be pretty thick as long as it's stirring. The way this is going to work is the heat's going to penetrate from the outside. Same as with cooling, also comes from the outside in. So the center is going to probably stay thick and solid the longest. So you go in here and you stir it a bit. It helps break it up and it distributes that heat. Stir, stir. So some of this is very liquid now. But there's other ways to do this. I mean, other types of clays that you can use. In this case, it's just Monsterclay and Chavant NSP, which are both sulfur-free. Because if you're working with any silicones for molding or casting, you want to stay away from anything that has sulfur in it. And these two are safe to work with silicone. You can even push this to the side so the heat will penetrate that direction. Right, we're going to see if this is done now. It should be done. Take this out. Woo! Alright, that is definitely done. Definitely done. Okay, so just lift this up. As you can see here. Ugh. Very liquid. Still a bit thick. I mean, you can get it thinner than this, but you don't need to, and you don't really want to do that. It gets more dangerous. It's hotter. It'll spill, splash. So at this point, you just want to stir it. Make sure it's thoroughly mixed. And there's a very minor color difference between the two. So if you see streaks in it, you'll know it isn't mixed fully. So you can just keep giving it a good stir. So I'll just say again that the difference between the two clays, you can use either one. Some people prefer one or the other. Some people really like their Chavant, some people really like their Monsterclay. And as I said earlier, the difference between them, the Chavant's stickier and the Monsterclay isn't very sticky. Monsterclay is also very waxy, and it tends to be more carvable. And I found that it holds detail better when you're trying to do very fine detail work. If you're worried about, so if you're doing a mold where you do a brush on mold style type of mold, I found I get very frightened with the Chavant because in the process of brushing, I was worried I'd actually start erasing some of the detail work that I put in the skin. So I gave Monsterclay another shot with the Monsterclay Gray, which you see is what I use on the clicker, and it did not disappoint on that front. So, but I decided, if you want the best of both worlds, and you can do this, you can do a mixture, and that's what I've done here. And you'll find that you can adjust it, get it more carvable, less sticky, or more sticky, depending what you want, and it works just fine. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting, useful in some way. You can try out a few different mixtures yourself, and I imagine you can do this with a lot of other different types of clay. I refrain from using anything that has sulfur just because of the nature of what I do here. Now that I just work pretty much using silicones all the time. So anyway, hope you got something out of this, and I'll be using this batch to make something probably tomorrow. Oh, and then lastly, I'll say, just let it cool overnight, and if you want to come back and give it a stir, get in here and give it a nice stir as it's cooling. It'll start to cool around the edges first, and you can just kind of keep mixing it a bit. And so it doesn't, solidify into one big clump. If you do come back and stir it every once in a while, you can start dragging it into the center like this. And that way you can go in there when you heat it again, because I will eventually put this back in the oven at a much lower temperature just to soften it. But that way I'll go in and I'll be able to grab a handful of the stuff instead of having to fight the edges of just one solid block. So anyway, that's it all. And I'll see you guys around. Cheers.
Hey fellas, if you enjoyed this, you should check out the primary LoreCraft channel where I sculpt in time-lapse some of your favorite characters. And if you enjoyed this video, please consider becoming a patron or join the members function on YouTube on my primary channel. You can also follow me on Twitch where I live stream the sculpting process. All the links are in the description below.